Question 3.2. The loss in mass shown in figure 3 is due to osmosis. The rate of osmosis between 0 and 40 minutes is faster in B, the small cubes, than A, the large cube. Is the rate in osmosis per millimetre squared per minute different between A and B? And use appropriate calculations. So we'll need to calculate the rate, and we need to take into account the fact that we are looking at the rate of osmosis per millimetre cubed per minute. So we're going to need to take into account the surface area as well. So looking at the graph, we can work out the rate at 40 minutes. So we can see for A, it went from 62 down to 57. So it had a mass change of 5 in the 40 minutes. And for B, it went from 62 down to 53. So there was a mass change of 9. So we can work out our rate of reaction by doing 5 divided by 40, so 0.125 for A, and for B, 9 divided by 40, so 0.225. So now we need to take into account the surface area. The question tells us that the width of each cube is 35 millimetres, so we work out the surface area by doing 35 times 35, so the height times by the length, the width, which would give us the area of one side, and then we're multiplying that by 6 because there are 6 sides, which gives us 7,350. So we then take our rate and divide that by our surface area, which would give us an answer of 1.7 times 10 to the minus 5 for A. For B, it tells us in the question that the cube has been cut into 8 equal sized cubes. So in order to do that, we can first of all halve the cube one way. So we cut the cube down the centre, which will make 2 areas. We will then cut the cube in half again along its height, which will then make us 4 cubes, but these are not going to be the same size. And then to make them the same size, you would then halve the cube by the width of it. So you would end up with 4 equal sized cubes, and you would end up with 8 equal sized cubes, and they'd all have 17.5 width and height. So you'd work out the surface area of one side, 17.5 times 17.5. Bear in mind there are 6 on each cube, which would give you 1,837.5. And then take into account that you've got 8 of these, which would be 14,700. Then you do the rate of reaction divided by the surface area, which would give you 1.5 times 10 to the minus 5. The question does allow a range for the calculations. There's no mark for identifying yes, they are the same or no, they're not, but they're looking for the calculations to prove it. So there's a range of between 1.6 and 1.8 times 10 to the 5 for A, and 1.5 to 1.6 times 10 to the 5 for B. If you have got both of those calculations correct, whether you've concluded yes or no, you can get 3 marks. If one of them is calculated correctly, then 2 marks can be given. If you haven't calculated any of those correctly, but you have calculated the surface areas correctly, 1 mark can be given. Or if you've calculated the rate of reactions correctly for both of these cubes, then you can have 1 mark. If neither of those are correct, then 1 mark can be given if you've shown a calculation of rate divided by the surface area.